Welcome back to the Edge of Light. My name is Michael Hammett. So it occurred to me that this question came up a few times that I never mentioned why I called this program the Edge of Light. So I'd like to do that now because it does potentially come across as a little bit vague. Like, what does that mean? What is your channel about? So the way I like to think about it is, imagine you're outside at nighttime, and if you look around based on starlight, moonlight, there's a bunch of little shadows on the ground from trees, yourself, rocks, houses, maybe, I don't know, cars, a bunch of shadows around. As dawn is approaching, the sun is rising, and the light from the sun is coming in, and one way to think about it is purging all these shadows from that space. So purging is even more of an aggressive way of describing it, in the sense that the light just is, it just occupies the space, and intrinsically the shadows dissolve in it. There's no battle between light and dark, as a lot of people might have you believe. The light arrives and the darkness goes. These are just things that happen. Now, why the edge of light? So as the shadows are being dissolved in the light, I call that healing. So for each individual person or communities or whatever, as the shadows, as these apparitions, as these illusions are being engulfed in light and becoming light, then the awareness blossoms, and there's healing. So the edge of light, as the sun is coming up and moving through the darkness, that edge of light is that edge of healing in whatever the field is. So that's why the edge of light. And I think, like I said, the important thing about this way of thinking is that it's not a conflict. The presence of light just inevitably and peaceably demands that the darkness is gone. So, edge of light. Okay. I wanted to address also something from the last episode, where I was talking about why might we be able to get away without sleeping, and so in that little discourse I was saying that when all the stress is out of your life, you don't need to sleep, as long as you don't create stress internally. And that was the whole thing with pain versus suffering. As long as you don't insist on creating suffering in your mind, then having suffering, stress outside, with daily normal things, you don't need to sleep, because you're not calculating, you're not strategizing, you're not grinding through these things. And so obviously that's impractical in the world that we live in. So but there's a nuance there that's actually quite a big elephant in the room, and it's that why do we have so much psychological distress in our lives? Like what would be the purpose of it? If someone were just to say, we're going to put this wild animal in your apartment, you say, no, that clearly seems like a bad idea. But if I said, let's put this wild animal in your mind and let that run chaos for the next week, most people don't hesitate. They invite it in. And so then it's this question: why do we do that? And I'm confident that the reason why has a couple different flavors, but essentially it's because you enjoy it. We enjoy it, all of us, me included, of course. The issue, sorry, to keep track of time. The issue is that when you're creating a sense of psychological stress for yourself, it's very stimulating, and that can take on, like I said, different flavors. So sometimes it's just the thrill of it. Why do people ride roller coasters? Why do people watch scary movies or suspenseful movies? Because that sense of tension and release is an enjoyable experience. Even though it can be scary, it still has these essence of enjoyment. If it was just pure scary, people wouldn't do it. There would be no value. So in this case, it's like, well, why do I fight with people? Well, in my mind, and so then there's a couple things, and depending on your temperament, this is a huge part. Depending on your temperament is going to probably help you to see why you would engage like this. So, for example, my personal temperament is more on the aggressive side, and so if someone says something or does something and I'm I get to pretend like I'm this powerful hero in my mind. Well, I'm gonna say this, and they're gonna be like, oh no, and just whatever nonsense I want to entertain myself with in order to recreate this delusion of my own sense of power and authority. So you say, why would you fight with someone in your mind all day? Well, that's why, because I get back. This is the kickback. This is the reward that I get, is to reinforce this delusion of myself that I'm powerful and I'm smart and I'm right, and all that. Now, another temperament is the kind of victim woe is me, and I'm not as familiar with that, but I imagine it's just the other side of the coin. You're not necessarily fighting with someone, but you're replaying it over and over in your mind, reinforcing the victim mentality. And even though it does you no good at all, in the sense of improving the quality of your life in the broader perspective, it does corroborate your ideas about yourself. And that's the kickback, that's the value that you get out of these narratives. So I find it absolutely fascinating that that we go to so much trouble to burn off massive amounts of energy in order to reinforce false concepts about ourselves. I mean, you say it out loud and it sounds absurd, and yet I can't think of a single person that doesn't do that. I mean, to various degrees, obviously, some people are better at it and some people are worse, or spend more time with it and sometimes spend less time with it. But everyone has an internal dialogue where they're engaging with people. And the nature of that dialogue is going to tell you where you're at. And that's why it's so important to watch it. So, I think that there are many steps to getting into that liberated level of awareness. And of course, one of them being, to stop fabricating stress for yourself in your mind, and then see if you sleep less. If that is occurring for you, let me know. Write in. I'd love to engage with that. Okay. next big topic is the consequence of being sensitive. So, I this topic came up because I'm married and to a woman, and I have a daughter. And looking at the two of them, they're both sensitive in a way that it is difficult for me to even understand, because I, on the other hand, am I'm very dense compared to my wife. So I actually used to tease her about being like mad at her because I hacked and chipped at my own crusted awareness for like close to a decade, and then she showed up in my life and was just intuitively doing all these things that I had to work so hard for. And so, it just, for her, she's very sensitive, comes very naturally. I think my daughter's going to be the same way. But it comes at a cost. So because I'm dense to certain things, then it makes me also more durable in these environments as well. So I can tolerate a lot more than she can. In a sense, you think about it like a machete versus a surgical scalpel, right? So a machete, you're just hacking away at things. You can beat it, sugarcane, which has bamboo, which has like silica in it. It's very, very, very hard. So, if you tried to cut bamboo with a scalpel, it would just break the blade, right? But then if you try to do surgery with a machete, that's going to be a big, big mess. So the different tools, different people applied are the value, the purpose, and the effectiveness is specific to the situation. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't make a sensitive person more durable or a more durable person more sensitive. And I think that is the goal, to find that nice balance in between. So, that's my practice, is to become more sensitive. And hers, she's mostly focused on the baby right now, but in general is to learn these strategies of energetic hygiene and boundaries to protect herself. And I'm going to go into that in a second. But I think that, again, something I mentioned in the first episode was that like myself as an example, the way that I engage and keep tabs on the world keeps me very, very grounded. I monitor the 10-year treasury. I know what the bond rate is, and if things like that, and also I just do a lot of gardening, and I'm blessed to live in Hawaii, so I'm barefoot a lot. I'm actually touching with my skin the ground a lot of the time, and my hands and my feet, and I get to be in the ocean as well. So it keeps my body grounded in that sense. And I think that that's really important, because what I have noticed in various spiritual communities, especially when plant medicine is involved, that people without a strong grounded practice, then they will have a tendency to kind of float off. And periods of floating, whatever, enjoy yourself. Extended periods or permanent is very dangerous. I know, unfortunately, a few people that have suffered from an ungrounded practice, and it's like, what's the point? Like, that you're not doing anybody any favors by hurting yourself. So if you notice that you're very fragile in that energetic sense, the best thing that you can do is to ground, because by stabilizing yourself, then you get the you allow yourself to grow even more sensitive, because now you can tolerate these things. Um, so the important then follow on to that is this energetic maintenance. Now, I think that the formality that is available for a lot of people, for example, a lot of people do smudging, or crystals, prayer, meditations. These things are all very, very helpful. So some of them are, they're to your liking. Like, I don't like smoke in my room, so I don't. We have some stuff, smudging stuff, but I don't. I'm not really. It's not really my thing. There was a period where I tried to become a tobacco guy because that was part of the various traditions that I was participating, but I just couldn't really do it. Like, it's just not my thing. And so, how you want to protect yourself from the cleansing point of view is going to be, really what's interesting for you in the way that you're going to be mindful to maintain. And that's the critical part. Because if you feel like it's a burden to go through the practice, you don't enjoy it, then you're not going to do it. It's just like anything. Like, if you don't enjoy running, then maybe that's not your sport. Try swimming. So it's got to be something like that. But that being said, it's not about the action of the body, which is what a lot of people, it seems, and I hope I'm not just making a naive assumption, but it seems like a lot of people who do these things are mostly under the impression that it's the thing that they're doing that's actually the point. And I would disagree with that. So it's not this shiny crystal that's protecting you. It's you as a sovereign being using this item as a way of executing your demand of saying, I demand to be protected. And then, if it's a crystal or if it's some kind of like metallic structure, a lot of people use various metals for this, or various shapes have significant meaning, protective meanings. Or if it's the smoke, if it's tobacco or sweetgrass, Native American traditions, maybe those items have an intrinsic protective quality of themselves, but whether they do that or they don't, I would be willing to bet that they pale in comparison to the statement of the individual being sovereign, saying, this is my space, these are my boundaries, you can't come in here. So I think that this message is really for all the sensitive ones out there. Get outside, touch the ground, be mindful of your space. Now, I do think that, having said that, I hope doesn't come across as a criticism to people who love their crystals. I have them. I have all the stuff. I'm not trying to be judgmental or a hypocrite. But the essence of it being an internal statement of, these are my boundaries, and friends welcome, everyone else stay over there. It's the constant vigilance. Well, I guess that's a little bit redundant. It's the vigilance of awareness saying, how do I feel about this situation? Am I okay with it? Check in with your body, monitoring the situation. because it's really, and going back to the beginning, it's the light of your awareness that effortlessly dissolves all the shadows. And it's so simple and straightforward that it seems like it shouldn't work. And yet, if you look at all the scripture, all the ancient literature about any of this, that's all it is, and that's my experience as well. It's the application of your awareness to something, just bringing something into awareness, and then that's it. That may not completely resolve the issue anymore, but engaging past that point, I think it will slow down the process. You just bring it to the level of awareness, and that's it. So monitoring yourself, checking in, and feeling, like, don't let it get to be a disaster. Don't let it get to be, this massive fire. You see a spark, oh, check it out. Okay, put your finger on it. Done. That's it. Because what we notice is that people, they smell smoke. It's probably nothing. Half the house is on fire. I don't know. It's getting really hot. Maybe I'll call a doctor. And we have all these people that are just in dire straits because they tolerate an enormous amount of subconscious material boiling and boiling and boiling and boiling, and it never stays subconscious. It can't. So all that time that it's building, it's slowly seeping out through the conscious mind and influencing the way that we interact with people. So noticing all that stuff is going to be, in my opinion, all you ever really need to do to stay energetically clear, just to be vigilant. Wow, got through that pretty fast. Okay, so let's see. I want to talk about angels for a minute because, I guess I kind of like to end these videos on something that's just kind of fun for me to think about. I was trying to think about how to explain higher dimensional, well, higher is not a good word, other dimensional beings. And so we live in 3 dimensions, or 4, 3 spatial, one temporal. And what I was thinking about was, like, let's say you had a being that was parallel to us, but in a dimension that's orthogonal, meaning that it crosses at 90 degrees, such that you could be in the same space as them, but you couldn't see them. It's like a piece of paper. If the piece of paper had a 0 thickness, by the time it goes like this, it's invisible now. Okay? But here's the thing, and what we see with physics, and my background being in physics, there's a crystal that we use in when we do fast shuttering lasers called birefringent crystal. And the way it works is that if you put an electric charge on the crystal, it's a piezo effect, it causes the crystal to vibrate in a plane. And the reason why that's really important is because when that crystal vibrates, the lattice, the binding structure of the atoms in that crystal, they basically like squeeze, contract, squeeze, contract, squeeze, expand, and at a very, very, very high rate. And so what happens is that when you normally have the electric field and magnetic field like this, then what happens with that contracting and expanding, it interacts with the magnetic and electric field we call it a slight retardation. So it causes a birefringence. So the magnetic field has a slight tilt to it, and it causes it, and because of that tilt, it essentially causes it to slow down. And another way of thinking about that is that the information from the magnetic field that's in this plane that would be invisible to this one, by slightly tilting it with that birefringent effect, it causes a little bit of that magnetic field to emerge into the field of the electric. And I think about that with like, so let's say angels, for example, which I have direct experience of angels, and that's why I feel comfortable talking about this. So, an angel, let's say Michael, is around, and it would make sense then that if Michael is here and wanted to emerge into this Michael's space, all it would take is a little bit of energy into the space to cause that birefringent effect, to cause a slight rotation, which then makes it so that there's a more tangible interaction between the two consciousness. I guess there's only one consciousness. These two facets of consciousness. The interaction is much more dense as opposed to just passing through, because now the two planes have this overlapping field. This because of the tilt. So anyway, I hope that didn't bore anybody, and maybe some science geeks out there are appreciative of this analogy. But I think that that's important, because a lot of times people say these angels, prophets. If you go into certain churches, that's like there's this hierarchy of consciousness. A lot of time, like when we were in Greek Orthodox will say, okay, so there's God, then there's Jesus, and there's I think it was prophets, then angels, then saints, and then maybe something else, and then all the people in the bottom. And I just don't agree with that hierarchy. I think that we are all in full potential, and it's just a matter of accepting the responsibility of the level of consciousness that is available to you as you're growing. So to say that an angel is closer to God than I am, or that any kind of like holier than thou, I don't agree with that, and I don't find it to be helpful way of thinking. So what makes more sense to me is that we are all manifestations of a singular consciousness, God, and we occupy by our nature different orthogonal spaces that, with the application of energy, consciousness, awareness, we can cause these different orthogonal spaces to interact with each other. And that, well, I don't know, that just makes a lot of sense to me. All right, that's enough for today. See you next week.